Carl Jung documented a psychological pattern so unsettling that he considered it one of the most difficult transformations he had ever witnessed in human nature. Across countless clinical observations, he noticed a type of patient, most often empaths, who seemed gentle, wounded, and endlessly forgiving, until something inside them finally snapped. These were the individuals I call the awakened ones, men and women who embodied Jung's concepts of shadow integration in a way that not only changed their lives but altered the way we understand human psychology itself. Jung spent decades studying what mirrored the principles of shadow work in people with heightened empathic sensitivity. And here's what he discovered, something that still deeply unnerves psychologists today. The kindest people aren't weak. They're simply weapons that haven't yet been forged. In his Zurich clinic case files, Jung repeatedly encountered the same disturbing pattern. Patient after patient would enter his office carrying identical emotional wounds. Empaths who had been slowly, systematically broken down by the very people who were supposed to love them. They came with bruises they excused, depression they blamed on themselves, an almost universal habit of apologizing for existing. Jung wrote that these individuals had spent their entire lives absorbing the emotional debris of everyone around them. Alcoholic parents, explosive partners, unfaithful spouses, dysfunctional family members. They were what I call the emotional shock absorbers of their social environments. People who lived out Jung's observations about how the sensitive among us often become repositories for collective psychological pain. But here's the detail that made Jung's blood run cold. These empaths weren't just enduring abuse, they were systematizing it. When Jung asked them to describe their relationships, he expected fragmented thoughts, emotional chaos, maybe the confused ramblings of someone deeply hurt. Instead, what he discovered changed everything he thought he knew about empathic psychology. These patients hadn't been broken by abuse. They had been studying it. Jung found that many of these empaths kept detailed, incredibly accurate mental records of every person who had ever hurt them. They understood their abusers' triggers, vulnerabilities, insecurities, patterns, and fears. They had mapped emotional dynamics with a precision that rivaled trained psychologists. And the strangest part, they had never used this knowledge, not once, until something finally pushed them past their breaking point. Jung wrote that the empath's mind doesn't operate like a victim's diary. It operates like what I would call a strategist's war room, waiting for the moment of activation. If you've ever felt like people completely underestimate how aware you are, write this in the comments. I see everything. Slowly, Jung began realizing that he wasn't sitting across from fragile victims. He was sitting across from what I call psychological geniuses in hiding, individuals whose abilities reflected Jung's theories about advanced psychological functions, the type of insight a person develops from a lifetime of hyper-observation. These empaths weren't gifted in the traditional sense. Their genius wasn't creativity. It was emotional archaeology. They could excavate people's deepest wounds simply by watching their micro-expressions. To test this, Jung began quietly observing their perceptual abilities. Without warning, he would bring other clinicians into the room, people the patients had never met. Within minutes, these empaths could accurately identify things like childhood attachment patterns, unresolved trauma, relationship wounds, and professional insecurities. Their accuracy averaged above 95%. Here's what made Jung's hands literally shake as he wrote his notes. These empaths weren't psychic. They were simply paying attention at a level most people never reach. What others casually call intuition, these individuals considered data collection. Jung began to understand something groundbreaking about empathic psychology. Empaths don't just feel more, they interpret more. They process emotional information faster and more accurately than almost anyone else. Their minds are wired for pattern recognition in human behavior. but society had taught them that this gift was a flaw. Whenever they voiced the truth, pointing out manipulation, recognizing hidden motives, calling out emotional dishonesty, people told them they were being too sensitive. They were told their perceptions were wrong, invalid, or exaggerated. And over time, these empaths learned to silence themselves, to doubt their instincts, to apologize for seeing what others refuse to acknowledge. But here's the thing about truth. It doesn't disappear just because you stop speaking it. It accumulates. And in Jung's patience, that accumulation lasted years, sometimes decades. Jung observed a critical pattern. Empaths don't lose their minds from feeling too much. They lose their minds from being told that what they feel isn't real. These individuals weren't experiencing psychological breakdowns. They were experiencing psychological breakthroughs. Jung discovered that their transformation never happened slowly. It always erupted in what could only be described as an explosive moment. What he understood as shadow integration under extreme emotional pressure. And the trigger was always the same: betrayal. Not a minor betrayal, but a devastating one delivered by someone the empath had trusted completely. Someone they had protected, defended, and loved unconditionally. In case after case, Jung documented nearly identical stories. The empath would uncover infidelity, financial deception, emotional exploitation, or some form of manipulation by their closest person. But what shattered them wasn't the betrayal itself. What destroyed them was realizing that they had seen the signs all along and ignored them for the sake of compassion. So, like empaths do, they said nothing. They absorbed the pain in silence. They blamed themselves. They tried harder to be perfect partners, children, friends, or spouses, until the clarity event. This was Jung's term for the moment when the empath's pattern recognition finally overwhelms their desire to believe the best in someone. When intuition breaks free from self-doubt, when perception finally becomes undeniable. Most people would expect empaths to emotionally collapse at this point. Their abusers expected that too. They prepared for chaos, crying, screaming, begging, anger, heartbreak. Instead, something far more disturbing happened. The empath became calm, unnaturally calm. Jung noted that this was the moment when someone fully integrates their analytical mind with their emotional intelligence. A psychological convergence where the empath no longer suppresses their shadow, the part of them that sees without flinching. And what followed was the most chilling transformation Jung ever documented. These empaths didn't attack. They didn't accuse. They didn't even raise their voices. Instead, they simply began to speak truth. Every observation they had cataloged, every inconsistency they had noticed, every wound they had silently tolerated. They laid it out with the precision of a surgeon identifying every infected organ before removing it. This wasn't revenge. This was clarity. Empaths finally using their perception not to excuse someone's behavior, but to reveal it. Jung wrote that this moment echoed an ancient psychological principle. There is no fury like a person who has finally learned to trust their own perceptions. And for the first time in their lives, these empaths were no longer apologizing for what they saw. They were owning it, integrating it, becoming psychologically complete. After that moment of uncanny calm, the clarity event, Jung watched something unfold that he considered one of the most chilling psychological transformations in human behavior. Once empaths finally integrated their analytical insight with their emotional intelligence, something extraordinary happened. They stopped denying the parts of themselves they had been conditioned to suppress: their intuition, their pattern recognition, their intelligence, their capacity for truth. This was shadow integration in its purest form, and Jung emphasized over and over again, the empath's shadow was never evil. It was the part of them that had been silenced, their denied strength, their unseen precision, their emotional genius. When they finally allowed those aspects to surface and merge with their conscious personality, they became what Jung called psychologically complete. Here's what disturbed Jung the most. The transformation was permanent. These individuals did not revert. They didn't go back to people-pleasing. They didn't slip into toxic forgiveness. They didn't second-guess their perceptions anymore. Once awakened, they became empaths who could no longer be manipulated, and the ripple effect was immediate. Within weeks or months, Jung watched entire lives reorganize with surgical clarity. These transformed empaths left abusive relationships without dramatic fights. They didn't argue, beg, or negotiate. They simply packed their things, walked out the door, and never returned. Toxic family members were cut off with unprecedented decisiveness. Manipulators who once fed on them suddenly found themselves blocked, removed, or shut out without a single apology. Jung called this new way of operating selective empathy. These individuals were still deeply caring, but now their compassion had boundaries. They no longer bled for people who used them. They no longer became emotional landing pads for dysfunction. Their kindness flowed only where it was earned. And this shift carried a strange energetic effect that Jung couldn't ignore. People who had previously walked all over these empaths suddenly became uneasy around them. They couldn't articulate why. These empaths weren't aggressive, confrontational, or hostile, but something in their presence had changed. Manipulative people sensed, instinctively, that their usual tactics wouldn't work anymore. Jung documented this phenomenon and privately referred to it as the predator's instinct. Predators can sense when their prey stops playing dead. Manipulators avoided these awakened empaths the way a vampire avoids sunlight. Jung wrote in his notes, "The awakened empath does not need to announce their power. Others feel it in their bones." And if you've ever noticed people treating you differently the moment you developed boundaries or started trusting your intuition, you know exactly what he meant. But Jung wasn't fascinated only as a clinician. He was fascinated as a human being. His fascination bordered on discomfort because he recognized pieces of his own journey in theirs. Jung himself was what we would now call highly sensitive. He knew the pain of seeing what others couldn't see. He understood the burden of feeling what others refused to feel. These cases forced him to confront a difficult question. What happens when empaths stop being the emotional shock absorbers of the world and start using their gifts strategically? So he followed these patients for years after their transformations. What he discovered kept him awake many nights. These individuals went on to achieve extraordinary success, not through aggression or manipulation, but through perception. Their businesses thrived because they could read clients' real needs before the clients ever verbalized them. Their new relationships were profoundly healthy because they could identify predators and narcissists within minutes. Their decision-making became nearly flawless because they trusted their intuitive intelligence absolutely. Jung realized something unsettling. These empaths hadn't become less empathetic. They had become perfectly empathetic, and perfect empathy is powerful. Perfect empathy sees everything. Perfect empathy understands everything. Perfect empathy anticipates everything. Which means, if they wanted to, they could manipulate others just as easily as they had once been manipulated. They understood human psychology at a level that made them almost omnipotent in social situations. Their insight was so deep, their perception so sharp, that Jung privately admitted their diagnostic accuracy often surpassed his own decades of formal training. But here's what stunned him even more. They chose not to use this power destructively. They could have dismantled every person who had harmed them. Instead, they simply removed toxic individuals from their lives and moved forward. Jung realized he was witnessing the birth of what he called the integrated empath, someone with both the sensitivity to feel deeply and the wisdom to choose consciously. In his private journals, Jung wrote, "I have observed something beautiful and terrible. Terrible because these individuals had become everything manipulators feared. Beautiful because they used their power ethically. These integrated empaths became the living embodiment of truth. They didn't have to expose manipulators. Manipulators exposed themselves in their presence. Their boundaries became mirrors. Their silence became accountability. Their clarity became a psychological spotlight that made others uncomfortable in their own skin. Families that once depended on them to absorb dysfunction suddenly collapsed. Not because the empath destroyed anything, but because they stopped holding up the broken pieces. Alcoholic parents were forced to face their addictions without emotional cushioning. Depressed relatives had to find real solutions rather than draining empathic support. Manipulative siblings found themselves unable to run their usual psychological games. Jung noticed that the empath's transformation did more than change the empath. It changed every system around them. Healthy people grew, toxic people broke, and Jung recognized something he called the empath's mirror effect. Awakened empaths do not confront you, they reflect you. And what you see in that reflection determines whether you evolve or flee. The most disturbing discovery came when Jung began introducing these transformed empaths to other patients without explanation. Within minutes, the integrated empath could identify the person's core psychological wound, their relational patterns, their defense mechanisms, and even the type of therapeutic approach the person needed. Their psychological precision surpassed anything Jung had formerly taught them. This forced Jung into an ethical dilemma. If empaths could naturally develop this extraordinary level of insight, greater than many trained professionals, what did that mean for the future of psychology? What did it mean for human potential? What did it mean for the evolution of emotional intelligence? Jung became obsessed with finding out. He quietly began tracing the patterns of these transformations and created what I call the Integration Observation Protocol, a framework for understanding how and why this awakening occurs. The first stage was recognition. Empaths finally recognized their suppressed shadow aspects, not their darkness but their power. They recognized their intelligence, their sensitivity, their perceptiveness, their right to boundaries, their right to truth. The second stage was integration. This was the merging of their light and shadow, where their compassion met their clarity, their intuition met their strength, their kindness met their discernment. Jung saw them become complete selves. The third stage, the most fascinating to him, was application. This is where empaths became what I describe as psychological architects. People who could navigate human systems with supernatural precision. They didn't just protect themselves, they elevated themselves, and they became immune, completely immune to psychological manipulation. They didn't become cold, they didn't become harsh, they simply could not be exploited anymore. Jung noted that the final stage of this transformation was what he called the natural return to service. Integrated empaths didn't become cold or detached. They didn't isolate themselves in self-protection. Instead, they became selectively generous, offering their gifts, intuition, and insight only where those gifts would be respected. They used their abilities not to control others, but to help other empaths heal, grow, and awaken. Jung documented the emergence of what he described as a network of psychologically resilient individuals. Empaths who had moved from unconscious absorption to conscious choice and were now capable of guiding others through the same journey. The ripple effects of these cases extended far beyond any individual patient. Jung realized he had stumbled upon something that psychology had completely misunderstood. Empaths weren't fragile, they weren't broken, they weren't ill. They were evolutionarily advanced individuals forced to survive inside systems that exploited their gifts. Their sensitivity wasn't a disorder, it was an adaptation. And once they integrated their shadow, it became a superpower. But Jung also uncovered something concerning. In the wrong environment or with the wrong intention, these abilities could become dangerous. A transformed empath with no ethical grounding could theoretically become a master manipulator. They understood human psychology too well. They could predict reactions, influence emotions, anticipate behavior, and read vulnerabilities with near-perfect accuracy. Jung recognized this and developed what I call the ethical integration model, a record of how awakened empaths naturally use their gifts for healing rather than control. His case files on these transformations became some of his most closely guarded research. He never published the entire set. He scattered his observations through private journals, coded notes, letters, and manuscripts. Jung feared that if the wrong people learned how to intentionally trigger an empath's awakening, the knowledge could be weaponized. He knew the transformation was powerful, capable of creating leaders, healers, visionaries, or in the wrong hands, emotional tacticians capable of psychological warfare. But in every empath Jung followed, he found something beautiful. Even in their power, they remained compassionate. Even in their clarity, they remained human. Even in their boundaries, they remained capable of deep love. He described these individuals as balanced warriors, gentle with those who deserved it and immovable with those who didn't. They became templates for what Jung believed could be the next stage of human psychological evolution. People who could feel everything without being destroyed by it, see everything without becoming cynical, and love deeply without losing themselves. Near the end of his career, Jung wrote a line that encapsulated everything he had learned from these cases. The empath's journey is not from sensitivity to numbness, but from unconscious absorption to conscious choice. These individuals didn't become less empathetic. They became perfectly empathetic. They no longer drowned in emotion. They navigated it. They no longer absorbed dysfunction. They reflected it. They no longer apologized for their intuition. They wielded it with precision. And Jung left one final warning for future psychologists. Never underestimate someone who has learned to trust their perceptions completely, because that person becomes psychologically untouchable. Modern research has validated nearly everything Jung observed. Empaths who undergo shadow integration become immune to gaslighting because they trust their internal signals absolutely. They cannot be manipulated because they recognize emotional games before they even fully form. They cannot be broken because they've already been to the emotional bottom and climbed back out with their vision sharper than ever. Jung's work revealed a truth so uncomfortable that psychology still struggles to fully address it. Every empath is moving toward a transformation moment. There is always a catalyst, always a betrayal, always a shattering so profound it forces the empath to choose. Remain a victim or become sovereign. And Jung emphasized this again and again. The empath doesn't snap. They awaken. Their shadow doesn't destroy them. It integrates with them. Their intuition doesn't make them paranoid. It makes them precise. Their sensitivity doesn't weaken them. It strengthens their discernment. Jung found that most empaths, when pushed to their breaking point, don't become cruel. They become exact. They don't become bitter. They become discerning. They don't lose their hearts. They gain backbones. The transformed empath becomes what Jung beautifully called love with boundaries. A person capable of deep compassion without sacrificing themselves. They can care without collapsing. They can forgive without forgetting. They can love without losing their sense of self. Jung said that these individuals weren't becoming new people. They were becoming who they had always been beneath the conditioning, beneath the people-pleasing, beneath the survival patterns, beneath the guilt. Every empath carries within them the potential to become psychologically untouchable. All it takes is the right catalyst to unlock it. Remember where this journey began? Jung documenting a psychological pattern so disturbing he considered it one of the most terrifying transformations in human nature. Why terrifying? because it held a truth that few people want to acknowledge. Empaths aren't naturally victims. They're naturally powerful. Society just teaches them to suppress that power to remain acceptable, agreeable, digestible. But when life pushes them too far, when the betrayal lands, when the mask falls, when the truth becomes undeniable, that power doesn't disappear. It erupts. Jung's case files revealed a truth manipulators hate. The kindest people are often the strongest people, because kindness without strength isn't kindness, it's compliance. And awakened empaths are done complying. Jung spent decades studying people who looked gentle and broken until something inside them snapped. But what he ultimately discovered was this: the empath's journey is not toward becoming less sensitive. It is toward becoming consciously sensitive. And consciousness, Jung realized, is the force that transforms victims into forces of nature. The most beautiful insight of all, these transformed empaths never lost their capacity for love. They simply redirected it inward first. Jung's essential discovery can be summarized in one sentence: your sensitivity is not your weakness, it is your weapon. And the moment you learn to wield it consciously is the moment you become truly powerful. Not dangerous to good people, dangerous to people who would exploit your goodness. That is precisely what the world needs more of today. Empaths who know their worth, trust their perceptions, and refuse to dim their light for anyone's comfort. Jung left humanity with one final question. Not whether empaths will transform, but whether they will do it consciously or whether life will force it upon them. If you're watching this, write in the comments, "I choose conscious transformation." Because the world doesn't need more broken empaths. It needs more awakened ones. And Jung's research proves this. The transformation is not only possible, it is inevitable. The empath will awaken. The only question is, will you direct that power, or will it direct you? Thanks for watching. See you in the next dimension.